Gather round, dear listeners. Let's take a hushed journey to the 1950s, an intriguing era of poodle skirts and Presley. But beneath the sheen of diner jukeboxes and tail-fin Cadillacs, there thrived a different and decidedly less ostentatious world. One that maneuvered clandestinely through the era's societal walls, avowal and denial, the underground gay communities of the 1950s. So, fluff up your pillow, allow yourself a content sigh, and let's wade into a part of history that, until now, may not have been openly discussed at your dinner table. History, you'll often find, has a persistent tendency to create its own secret codes and cryptic languages, like children inventing their own secret handshake. Now, imagine you're a finely dressed gentleman in the 1950s, sashaying down the streets of bohemian Greenwich Village. Rainbow ties weren't quite the fashion statement back then. So how would you, a gay man, subtly communicate your identity to a community of similarly discreet fellows? Behold the color-coded handkerchief system, a dress code Morse code of sorts that ignited an invisible network of recognition among gay men. Introduced in San Francisco and spreading its silent signals across the nation, the system had men wearing different colored handkerchiefs in their back pockets. Blue meant you were a cop, while a sedate red meant you were a two-way, a historical innuendo for being versatile. But lest we forget, pocket pickings weren't as straightforward. Left pocket or right pocket? Ah, that difference made all the difference. Now, you might chuckle at the notion of entire conversations taking place through the language of linen, but in an era of ferocious conformity, these silent signals were more than fashion pedigree. They built safe spaces, fed hungry hearts, and quite frankly, added a rebellious dash of color to the 1950s drab Pantones. In this vibrant underworld of covert codes, there were other whispers too. You might find a friend of Dorothy. No, not the one lost in Oz, but a euphemism for a gay person. You see, the character of Dorothy, lost in a strange world, estranged from societal norms, struck a resonant chord within the gay community and became a clandestine password. Ingenious, isn't it? Societal parameters forced these communities to reveal themselves only in hushed whispers and veiled nods, like a very, very exclusive club. Their carefully built world, tucked away from probing eyes, existed entirely in symbols and signals. The gay bars were their safe sanctuary, the dulcet tones of Judy Garland anthems, their triumphant anthem, an adorned handkerchief, their badge of honor. Now, as you settle further into your cozy haven, lulled by this narrative of secret signals, remember these unsung heroes, always striving for acceptance, always coded, always secret. Their sartorial semaphore and linguistic artistry painting an unassuming canvas of yesteryears in audacious streaks of invisible colors. If these stories help you drift off, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. And before you fully fade into dreamland, I would love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. As we wrap up this chapter of clandestine communication, embroidered handkerchiefs, and friends of Dorothy, allow your mind to rest on the final silent signal of the night. Imagine a cruising park bathed in the soft, clandestine glow of moonlight, where the silent glances and secret signals continue under nature's watchful eye. Do you dare to join us as we tiptoe into these secret gardens in our next narrative rendezvous? But for now, let your minds drift from the vibrant underworld of 1950s, of the people who subtly resisted the norm, to the rhythm of your breath, slowly ebbing into the night. Cozy up as we jump back to the buttoned-up world of the 1950s, a time of slick-back Elvis hairdos, rock and roll swing dance, and just a rapscallion's amount of Cold War, a nuclear panic. Now imagine navigating that petticoat and necktie labyrinth as a gay person, hoping to find and connect with others of the same persuasion. Rather formidable, isn't it? Thank goodness, behind those chastely garnished household picket fences, secret layers of communication were brewing, much like the clandestine after-hours of recipe-sharing gatherings we're sure Mrs. Henderson hosted. In this labyrinthine epoch, the Maze Runner prize was cracking the coded language. In clandestine whispers, gestures, or even in the pages of underground publications, those in the LGBTQ+ community communicated. An entire lexicon, almost a separate language, was created. Hello Polari. Polari was a form of cant slang used by some in the British gay community. It was a mishmash of Romani, Italian, and a pinch of theatrical cant. If you were strolling down a London street and heard someone comment on your lallies, it was not a misspelled fruit compliment. Congratulations, you'd just been complimented on your legs in Polari. But don't get too excited. There won't be a surprise language proficiency test at dawn. Much like the madmen of Madison Avenue, who use jargon to keep the uninitiated out of their smoking and whiskey-swilling merriment, Polari provided the LGBTQ+ community with some much-needed insulation. Not only was Polari a tool of survival, but it also played a pivotal role in creating and preserving a vibrant culture that could be enjoyed even in those frothy, challenging times. It was fun. It was flirty. It was the secret password to an enriching world of self-expression. And you bet your lallies, it was cheeky. In North America, a different kind of code was rising to prominence, seeking to bring struggle-flavored joie de vivre, the hanky code. The hanky code came like a gust of sartorial savvy and was ingeniously simple. A man would place a colored handkerchief in his back pocket, indicating his sexual interests or kinks. Red meant one thing, navy another, and if you were sporting mustard yellow, then my dear friend, you were into some eccentric dabbling indeed. Distinctively coded fashion often served as a less linguistic, more visual type of secret handshake, a nod to the comrades in the sea of conformity. Perhaps it was a delicately edged handkerchief peeping out from under a sleeve or a pertinent lapel pin. If you spotted a woman wearing a thumb ring or sporting an undercut hairstyle, you might be beholding lesbians signaling to each other in the 1950s. All this might make you wonder if humanity has missed a dapper trick or two by not keeping a more extensive, color-coded accessory system alive. Alas, one might never know when it might be useful to signify one's fondness for pineapple pizza or vintage stamp collecting via pocket square hues. The complexity of these signals was more than amusing historical trivia. It was an ingenious carnival of survival, witticism, and bravery. Each piece was carefully stitched together to create a patchwork quilt of human stories united under the banner of a secret society. As the world slept on in its oblivion, a nightlife blossomed under the starlight, hidden in plain sight, yet vibrant and throbbing with life. The shadows of whispered secrets dispersed in the lamplight as bars and safe havens popped up, providing oases in the harsh societal desert. These establishments took courage finely brewed from the essence of the yearning to be uninhibited. If you imagine the 1950s as a strictly milkshake and diner deal, it's time for a history readjustment. More on that in next Vintage Snapshot. So get on your satin sleep mask, my dear insomniac time travelers, for in our next half dream, we'll pay an after-hours visit to some clandestine corners where the vespers of freedom were delicately sipped away from society's prying eyes. We'll thread through secret doorways and lush velvet curtains into the world of underground speakeasies. The nexus points for our daring gay compatriots of the past. Oh, the stories those hushed walls could whisper if they could talk. But for now, shh, let's keep this our little secret, shall we? See, back in the day, sometimes the secret to survival was in the art of subtle insinuation, the refined elegance of suggestive symbolism. A well-placed wink here, a knowing nod there, just enough to forge hidden alliances in plain sight. The underground gay community in the 1950s adapted this art form with supreme skill to guard their secret world. This world was a sanctuary, invisible to prying eyes, yet a warm and welcoming hideaway for those who knew the secret codes. One such ingenious code system was the handkerchief code. Now I know what you're thinking. What could possibly be secret about our dear, reliable nose wipers, brow debunkers, and in times of disaster, makeshift face masks? Well, dear listener, it turns out these humble squares of fabric had a little side gig as semaphore flags for the gay community. Now, this wasn't like a secret Batman signal in the sky that only the Bat-curious could comprehend. The origins of the handkerchief code are rooted in San Francisco, where the community was both densely packed and diverse. With the fitted blue jean revolution underway, many a back pocket were pushed into service as a flag spotter. But don't worry, we're not heading into a melancholic deep dive into denim. Not today. You see, much like Van Gogh, the handkerchief code painters didn't limit themselves to one palette. A wadded black kerchief signaled interest in BDSM, while a grey one indicated an interest in bondage. The hanky code even included some rather specific niche interests, so we'll avoid turning your sleep story into an uncensored HBO special and skip the finer details. Though for all its cheeky inventiveness, this wasn't just a friendly sporting game, akin to guessing the jelly beans in a jar at the town fair. The stakes were significantly higher than tooth decay. To, so to speak, wave the wrong flag could mean outing oneself to a society that was then unready to offer acceptance. This was a tiptoeing act, each shimmy of the handkerchief causing silent ripples through this undercurrent. But as we ease into this labyrinth of secret codes and unspoken language, it's imperative not to overlook a beautiful byproduct of this inescapable subterfuge. The sparkling gem hidden in this heavy cloak of secrecy was the sense of unity, of belonging, of collective identity that arose from the thrumming undercurrent. Imagine being the friendless new neighbor marooned in the cold labyrinth of an unfamiliar city. You're strolling aimlessly when a single flash of crimson tucked in a passerby's back pocket guides you towards the comforting ambience of hidden kinship. Or imagine being a domestic damsel in disguise whose secret life was nestled in a green-girdled hanky. The sight of a similar symbol adorning a grocery shopper converts a mundane chore into a wistful rendezvous. So you see, amidst this hush-hush signal system evolved a radiant camaraderie, one that not just united individuals but built a fortified community. This was an era where being out could have dire consequences. And yet it was also a time when being in signified finding a sense of acceptance, solace, and shared companionship in the secret seals of common codes. But as you drift on this tidal path of hanky signals and blue jeans revolution, don't be lulled into complacency just yet. Despite the ambiguities of the handkerchief code, there were even more risky furrows to navigate. Other secret signals in this shadowy world range from melody to meeting spots, which we'll uncover next. So, while you let the patterned world of handkerchiefs lull you to dreamland, get ready for the mysterious melodies that carried hidden meanings into the night in our coming exploration. Imagine, if you will, a time before smartphones, before the internet, even before big clunky computers filled entire rooms. It's the 1950s, and you need to convey a message to a particular subset of society, a group of people who exist largely in the shadows. To use an anachronism, you need to slide into someone's DMs without actually having a DM to slide into. Quite the predicament, wouldn't you say? But fear not, our plucky, ever-resourceful gay pioneers navigated this communication labyrinth with an ingenious solution: the humble handkerchief. Oh yes, the humble hanky, an object of utilitarian simplicity. Once the soldier of the sniffle, the paragon of personal hygiene, was to become the herald of an underground communication. Now I hear you muttering, "A handkerchief? Really? How laughably simple." And you would be partly right. The idea was beautifully simple, but it would shape a covert network spanning across America with all the subtlety and style of a world-class power spy. You see, it's all about the color code, a veritable rainbow of meaning. It works something like this. Say you saw a dashing young gent with a green hanky popping out of his back pocket. That wasn't just a fashion statement or a critique on the lack of tissues. No, that was signaling availability, an interest in company, if you will. But it's not just the color. Oh no, that would be far too straightforward. Nothing like a good bit of obscurity to add a pinch of excitement. Which pocket carried the hanky made all the difference. Left pocket, the chap's looking to lead. Right pocket, well, he's indeed right. Receptive to companionship. Who knew, right? We've just barely scratched the surface of the covert 1950s gay scene, and we're already neck-deep in what might well have been the precursor to modern text-speak. Yet, in its delightfully intricate system of rules, the color code provided more than a means of secretive communication. It offered a small, delicate taste of freedom, of belonging, for people whose desire for connection was matched only by the societal forces that demanded they remain invisible. But what was the origin of this colorful code? The legend suggests that it may have begun in San Francisco, an early hub for counterculture movements, as a response to a crackdown in 1969 by law enforcement, those sticklers, against public gatherings of all types. The idea was simple. Use something blatantly visible but totally innocuous to send a message to the initiated while confusing outsiders. There's also the gloriously urban legend that conjures up an image of a bored Levi's factory worker who, upon having run out of white thread while stitching a large order and deciding that the color didn't really matter, used different colored threads for different jeans. And well, the less observant ones among us might not notice such a detail. But believe me, those on the lookout did. The beauty of history is that sometimes truth is stranger, and dare I say funnier, than fiction. So who knows? Perhaps it was an industrious tailor or an officer's oblivious slip that led to this color-coded revolution. Our story continues, drawing us further into the shadows. As our pioneering friends navigated the perils of this brave new world of coded communication, they also walked along the edge of a precipice. Discovery could mean exclusion, outing, condemnation. But their spirit was unbroken, and thus the whispered echo of their silent messages reverberates even to this day. So tuck that sense of intrigue in your pocket. Any pocket will do. We're not policing your intentions here. Remember that proverbial handkerchief as we delve even deeper into the night, into a world where friendship could be coded in fabric, and love might be found silently rolling across a dance floor covered in the era's finest vinyl. The glimmers of a subculture in sequin and disguise are just around the corner, in the gleaming lights of 1950s drag balls. But that, weary listener, is a tale for another nod into this cozy, comedic yawn of our shared history. The 1950s unfurls like a vintage film reel, the celluloid crisp with clandestine whispers and secret smiles. At this juncture in our nocturnal journey, dear listeners, we've arrived at an element so quintessentially gay of the 50s that even the starchiest of starched shirts couldn't resist articulating their identities in this way. Today, I speak of the coded language and secret signals in a time of seething repression. The whimsical lexicon of the underground. From colorful idiosyncrasies to special winks, every nook and cranny of communication bore silent voices that celebrated the otherwise forbidden. One such example was Polari, a candid carnival of a talk, a secret dialect spoken mainly among the British gay community. Imagine a language so fringed with theatrical flamboyance and marine jargon that it could make even the most prosaic conversation sparkle like a sequin on a drag queen's gown. Polari was truly the embodiment of fabulous flamboyance, and yet, like the coy smile at the corner of a lover's lips, it had a soft, unassuming subtlety. Your average John Doe on the London street might hear two men discussing their Vada for a dolly or dish, yet remain blissfully unaware that they were admiring a handsome man. The delicious irony of the visibly invisible. Now, it wasn't all fantastic vernaculars and sparkling language. Sometimes the secret code was as basic as, wait for it, a ring. Yes, dear listeners, a simple band of gold, silver, or the rather unassuming brass served as a symbol of the gay community. More specifically, a man wearing a ring on his pinky was a secret whisper into the world, a signal which said, "Hey, I'm just like you. But it was a delicate dance, a precarious balancing act. One delicate misstep, one misplaced accessory, could uncover a world the bearers were forced to keep hidden. This risk was indeed part of the allure, a kind of dangerous tango danced on the edge of a societal volcano. It was half the fun, and all the fear, of being unseen in plain sight. And then, there were the coloured handkerchiefs, simple pieces of cloth bearing silent declarations and eerie confessions. An echo of an encrypted language, handkerchiefs worn on the left indicated a more dominant personality, while those worn on their right suggested the opposite. The colour codes varied symbolically from city to city, coast to coast, from New York's red for a certain preference to San Francisco's lavender for another. The coded semantics of colour became an integral part of the society's glorious subterfuge. These signals, dear listeners, they built bridges in a time when society was building walls. They offered solace when the world offered stigma. They were an expression of identity when the world asked for conformity. Within society's monochrome, they spun a tapestry, thrumming with vibrant, jubilant colour. And yet, we mustn't forget the actors behind the scenes. For every coded word spoken, every signal given, there were the seekers, the dedicated detectives of the everyday, dissecting the details of mannerisms, jewelry, and even the choice of beverage in a bar. These careful observers were the connective tissue between whispers and comprehension, turning the obscured into the acknowledged. Now doze off serenely while we drift from the vibrant vocabulary of hidden communities onto quieter shores. Up ahead, in our next chapter, lies an encounter with a quiet rebellion through the medium of literature, a world where words on the page became silent signals, resonating loudly within hushed hearts. For now, my dear ones, let your minds wander into the coded crevices of the 1950s as the gentle lullaby of a clandestine language serenades you into serenity. Sweet dreams. Picture yourself, if you will, in a dull, dreary office building, the epitome of grayscale mundanity in the 1950s, right smack in the heart of a nondescript American city. Yes, my nighttime narrative novices, we have arrived at the nerve center of the 1950s gay code signal hub, the telephone switchboard. You see, for the proficient codebreaker previously pertained to in Chapter 5, making connections, gender pun intended, wasn't strictly about decoding fanciful, fluttery hand gestures at the local diner. It was also, somewhat ironically, about finding your voice in a world that firmly insisted you remain silent. Telephone switchboards of the era represented far-reaching, tentacle-like networks. Connecting calls was an art, a vast, sprawling dance in which operators pirouetted their way around circuit diagrams and switch positions, breathing life into previously hushed lines. Think of it like a massive, physical version of the internet, just with more brightly colored plugs than cat videos. And nestled subtly within this swirling vortex of voices, a particular family of linguistics flourished. Phrases and slang, heavily veiled in layers of subtext, were spoken through delicate whispers, like secret knocks on a hidden door. Black Star might mean a clandestine meeting in the park. Daisy-chained could signal someone seen but not heard, a well-closeted individual, peeking out cautiously to explore the world beyond societal norms. Now consider the critical role operators played here. Wearing their often overlooked hats as gay community linchpins, the operator could add a whole level of anonymity to these inner circle conversations, connecting calls between parties who ostensibly should not even be aware of each other's existence, let alone holding secret discussions over the wires, making voice-based clandestine communication possible in an era when being yourself was an act of quiet defiance. Meanwhile, the more tech-savvy members of the secret linguistics lexical league began to notice something peculiar about the circuits themselves. Evidently, when set up in specific orders, these networks could send out additional, hidden signals. Now, I'm not talking about Morse code, you silly goose. Remember, loud dots and dashes would hardly set the atmosphere for a gentle sleep. Instead, it was a nifty bit of circuitry involving relays clicking, softly, just long enough to signal to those in the know why Operator 76 hadn't shown up for bridge night last Thursday. And while society might have been turning a blind eye, let it not be said that the world of technology did. Indeed, the advent of automation progressively eased the processing and transmission of these signals, creating seamless, invisible connections on a national scale. Affordable, long-distance calling, the sprouting of the direct dialing system, and above all, the birth of the answering machine. Each of these played their understated part in bringing the silhouetted gay community into the light, albeit incrementally. To describe it marvelously, it was a symphony written in silence and sung by shadows, growing fainter with every passing dial tone, yet adding another hidden layer of complexity to the code-furled world of the 1950s gay community. Their language was a well-tuned orchestra of wordplays and circuit plays, broadcasting a resounding message of identity, togetherness, and shared struggle into a world that preferred the frequency of willful ignorance. So, as we exit this shadowy exchange filled with clicking relays and soft whispers, cast a fond look back at that humming wall of circuits and consider how the seemingly insignificant and drab can hide such a striking network of connections, each a lifeline, each a cable carrying a secret signal, all integral to the grand concert that was the first network society of the LGBTQ+ community against the muted backdrop of the 1950s. But hush now, we must be off. The scent of lavender hangs heavy in the next chapter, and whispers of fabulous house parties float on the wind, a direct invite to a most unusual soiree. We proceed in our investigation and jog along history's hidden alleyways to find the roots of gay gatherings well concealed within the apparent banality of a suburban potluck. That, my sleepy sages, is a tale for a new day as we navigate the ordinary imbued with traces of the extraordinary. As we tiptoe, so to speak, into the coded language and hidden signs and symbols of the clandestine gay community of the 1950s, we find ourselves standing before the unassuming doors of Ella's Tea Room. Now, Ella's Tea Room, as drab as it sounds, was not exactly a grand, ornate destination for highbrow social occasions. Rather, Ella's catered to a more unique clientele whose interest in tea might have been less conventional, more symbolic. So, with a wink and a nod, let's knock on Ella's door and see where it leads. Now, you might ask, what's so special about this tea? Well, dear listeners, back in 1950s America, tea was gay slang for gossip or chit-chat. To spill the tea was to divulge juicy secrets or share scandalous stories, something which held tremendous value in a context where discretion was often the difference between social acceptance and total outcast. And Ella's Tea Room, despite being a dingy hole-in-the-wall establishment, was a bastion of tea, serving as a hub for the vibrant but hushed conversation that kept this clandestine community connected. Wait, what is that you are seeing on the wall? Is it a picture of a green carnation? Ah, the plot thickens, my dear listener. You see, the green carnation became an underground symbolism in itself. This, of course, harks back to Oscar Wilde, who was rumored to have worn one on his lapel as a subtle identification of his sexual orientation in the Victorian era. Thus, a green carnation in a cozy tea room in the heart of 1950s, America bore a similar secret message. Then, huddled around a corner table, beneath the dim glow of a single orange bulb, were the flamboyant queens. Now, queens was not always a term of endearment, especially in a time when kings ruled the world. However, in the dazzling universe of Ella's, queens held a different kind of power. They wore bright red ties, a bold contrast to the dreary greys and browns of the traditional business suit. And, if one of these vibrant ties was left on a chair or draped over a doorknob, it served as a covert signal of a safe meeting spot. But the secret language of the 1950s gay community wasn't limited to linguistic nuances and subtle sartorial choices alone. Even everyday gestures and accessories were tapped into in what amounted to a hidden Morse code. Carrying an umbrella, even on a clear day, was a signal, an overture of sorts. A left-handed cigarette, that is, smoking a cigarette in your left hand, was another coded message, a subtle nod to individuality and non-conformity. Even popular music of the time was loaded with secret signals. The jukebox at Ella's, chronically stuck on Bessie Smith's "Tain't Nobody's Business If I Do," might have been a coincidental glitch for the unsuspecting patron, but to the community, it was no accident. The lyrics, if listened to carefully, were a cheeky anthem of their vivid yet veiled existence. As we closed the door to Ella's tea room, leaving its warm glow and cottony whispers behind, the story of this clandestine community of the 1950s continues, each chapter a testament to human resilience and unshakable kinship. But as we drift further into the night, here comes the sound of gentle footsteps. You see, dear listeners, even in the dark alleys and the shadowy corners of hidden basements, the echo of a certain rhythmic tap holds the key to another fascinating line of communication. So let's tread softly with the hush of history at our heels, as we wait for the curtain to rise on the secret ballet of the Polari men. That, my dear sleep seekers, is a story for another night. But don't worry, you won't have to wait long. The night is still young. Now, brace yourself for a charming train ride, straight into the quaint world of coded language, harking back to the 1950s. Can you imagine? Grown men whispering secret codes under the jazz-filled air of smoky nightclubs, winking subtly at each other across sprawling diners, trading covert glances and using innocent words in, well, not so innocent form. Welcome, my dear insomniacs, to the thrilling clandestine vernacular of the underground gay community in the 1950s, known as Polari. What's Polari, you ask? Well, let's unwind the clock to reveal this enigma draped in hushed whispers and clandestine giggles. Imagine this. You're in the bustling taverns of London's East End, and you overhear a conversation between two impeccably dressed gentlemen. They are chatting animatedly, but their language is as elusive as the Loch Ness Monster. Words like Vada, Eek, and Bijou punctuate their dialogue. You cock an eyebrow, wondering if they've maybe had just a dram too much of the old liquor. Well, my dear fellow, let's just say that congratulations are in order because, nonchalantly, you've just stumbled upon a private conversation in Polari. Polari was a secret language, a linguistic survival tool, if you will, born out of the necessity for gay men to converse privately in an age when homosexuality was a criminal offense. Had they known you were eavesdropping, they would have probably shared an oganai, a joke in Polari, my lovelies, at your expense. Now, let's take Vada. No, it's not an experimental English muffin, but it means to see, as in Vada at that fine-looking Omi on the dance floor. Quite the coded compliment, wouldn't you agree? And Eek. Nope, not a melodramatic expression of fear, but a contraction of the French visage, meaning face. Bijou, meanwhile, was borrowed from French and means small and elegant, often used to refer to certain refined establishments. Yet, even amidst coded lingo, humor found its way, a lampooning of the societal norms of the day. Polari was more than just a language. It was an act of defiance, draped in comedic undertones. It was Oscar Wilde in linguistic form, a way of saying, we are here, we are queer, and we have a heck of a sense of humor about it. Quite liberating, isn't it? Let's delve a tad deeper, shall we? Consider the term boner, meaning good. It could be used to describe anything from a delicious meal to an attractive gentleman. Now, picture this. A man sees another distinguished gentleman saunter into the bar, radiating confidence. He nudges his friend and whispers, affably boasting, Vada that bona omi, meaning, look at that handsome man. Imagine the innocence and light-heartedness it breathed into an era fraught with fear. So you see, the world of Polari was a delightfully clandestine realm, a buoyant pool of mischief and rebellion against repressive societal norms. And amidst the muted music of the clandestine nightclubs and the hushed whispers of Polari lay a resilient community, jovially defiant, bound together by the strength of their shared secret language. It's safe to say that Venus, the Roman goddess of love herself, would wink at their brilliant use of coded language. Speaking of Roman myths, have you ever heard about the festival of Lupercalia? You haven't? Oh well, lucky for you. We're just about to meander down the Roman alleyways next, revealing the fascinating secrets of the gay community during Lupercalia. After all, these alleyways are a fabulous testament to history's wonderfully boner sense of humor. Now, grab your toga. We're about to make a whimsical time jump straight into the heart of ancient Rome. Nighty-night, history aficionados, sleep well knowing Polari has you covered. And just when the world was trying to fit into grey suits and black ties, the rambunctious, unapologetically flamboyant life force that was the vibrant gay scene of the post-war era refused to be caged. Building a secret language of fashion and style was not only a matter of survival, but also rebellion, injecting a riot of colour into the staid monochrome of 1950s conformity. Let's cozy up in our embroidered satin slippers and whisk ourselves back to the mid-1950s, when the Harvard Yard is lush, exuding the perfume of blossoming dogwood. We meet two dapper young men, we will call them Harvey and Gilbert. Even if the label reads default for them, you can bet your pearls they're anything but. I like to imagine there was a generally accepted meeting etiquette among these gents, a veritable connoisseur's intro to 50s gay fashion. If you spy a finely cultivated Van Dyke beard, a style kin to goatee, there, my friends, is a giant red rose affixed to a lapel in an otherwise beige garden. The man sporting this beard style, most likely, has an interest in Roscoe, the more colourfully named cousin of Oscar. And by Oscar, I mean Wilde, and not the golden statue, who, history agrees, was distinctly fond of the romantic company of men. Then there's the pinky ring. A little swish, a little sparkle, a little symbol, a camp signal, a little winky-linky "Hello Sailor" disguised as innocent ornamentation. Remember Harvey? In this gathering, you wouldn't see him flaunting flamboyant tie-dye tees, but with the subtlety of a well-rehearsed ballet, he'd flash his pinky ring. Hand to heart, fingers curved just so, a casual gesture carrying a clandestine message of like-minded companionship. Like romantic semaphore, an intricate language evolved. On a casual observer's glance, it was an interchangeably random assortment of colors and combinations. But to those who knew, those dainty lavender handkerchiefs poking out their chest pockets signaled a plucky, under-the-radar determination to convene, to identify, to somewhat flamboyantly confirm their fraternal bond. Indeed, those were not the days when you could just strut around flaunting one's multicolored plumage. It took the saying, "Actions speak louder than words," a step further into accessories speak volumes. A wink might just be a twitch. A pipe could just be an accessory favored by Sherlock Holmes. But a polka handkerchief on the left pocket, all lamentation about the demise of pocket squares, aside, was a declaration. Even a casual cigarette being enjoyed could be a fluttering white flag signaling kindred spirits when held a certain way. You see, our stalwarts had the quiet resilience of camouflaging chameleons, but the brazen spirit of peacocking peacocks. Now, coding one's attire or behavior was not just about being part of a cool, secret club, although you must agree, it's a rather exhilarating thought. It was about finding a semblance of normalcy, an opportunity to communicate openly, albeit in code, in an era that had no space for them to breathe freely. So, as you climb into your beds tonight, think of Harvard and Gilbert and this whole constellation of other extraordinary men who, with handkerchiefs, pinky rings and Van Dyke beards, put down their own yellow brick road in a maze of grey suit and ties. Now, my friends, you can say we've decoded the Morse code of fashion that characterized the gay scene of the 50s, but you need to buckle up. we are not done yet. Because where do you think these dapper gentlemen gathered for some black coffee and coded conversation? Next, let's make our way to some of the coolest underground joints of the era. Wink wink, nudge nudge, say no more. Sweet dreams, my history enthusiasts. The jukebox tunes and secret bars of the 50s await you with open arms tomorrow night, in the misty landscape of the 1950s, when being open about your sexual orientation was as rare as spotting a unicorn on Wall Street. Deciphering who belonged to this secret brotherhood was a game played with charm, wit, and nuanced symbols. And so it was, sweet listeners, that the language of hanky code was born. But let's not jump ahead. The hanky code isn't the hero of this chapter. But don't worry, it gets its moment of glory soon enough. A billion-dollar industry of color-coded pocket squares that will have to wait. The real star of this chapter is a humble accessory that has been unjustly forgotten to the cobwebs of history. Simple ring. Picture this. We are in a bustling city street. There's a slight chill in the air. Perhaps it's autumn, and leaves are creating a sepia-toned mosaic underfoot. Amidst all the busy bodies, crisp suits, and echoing heel clicks, your attention is drawn to a man standing nonchalantly by a lamppost. He's drumming his fingers on a newspaper, smoking a cigarette, and on his right hand, there's a ring. A pinky ring. Sounds too subtle. Well, subtlety was the clever yet necessary camouflaging tactic of the time. Amidst the mundane details of daily life, a pinky ring was a sophisticated way to declare one's place in the gay community. In these coy public displays, subtlety was key, like the understated beauty of a moonlit night in comparison to the blazing glory of day. The pinky ring served as a beacon of recognition, an understated rallying cry that whispered, "I am here. I am one of you." The decadent humor and almost theatrical casualness of it all was part of the magic. Now you might be asking yourself how the chivalrous denomination of being a pinky ring guy came to be associated with being gay. Well, this nifty trick came from the idea of inverting gender norms of the day. Men typically wore rings on their third finger, while women often wore theirs on the pinky. Therein lay the modifier to the code. If a man wore a ring on his pinky, it symbolized a subtle rejection of traditional machismo, hinting at his allegiance to a different norm. It was a statement of functionality wrapped in fashion, an armor gleaming with the soft glow of identity. But it wasn't just pinky rings, was it? The drills of discretion ran deep, and an extensive vocabulary of clever signals was coined by the intrepid spirit of these unsung heroes. Details as minute as the direction of a tie clip, the choice of a wrist to don the watch, the understated wink, the casual but swift brush of a hand against a coat pocket, all morphed into a silent ballet of unspoken words. One might argue that it was a risque game of cat and mouse, the thrill of secret signals. But here's a thought for your hibernating neurons, just before they doze off to la-la land. What if it was more? What if it was a resilient form of silent protest against the unjust status quo? A call for freedom wrapped in the trappings of everyday life? Irony at its finest. Don't you agree? The norms that sought to restrict were surreptitiously recycled into tools of liberation. It was in the very fabric of the oppressed that they found their voice, their strength, bound together by a threadbare ring on the pinky finger. And speaking of fabrics, dare I hint at the colourful artifice of the hanky code? Well, that's a story, or rather a chapter, for another time. For now, let's drift away with the rustle of autumn leaves and the coy wink of a pinky ring as we dip our toes into the vibrant waters of the secret language that revolutionized the world of fashion in the gay community. In the dapper days of the 1950s, our underground gay communities had to invent their own cryptic communication codes as silently as one shushes a snoring pug. So let's peek under the foggy veil of secrecy, tiptoeing through a clandestine realm rippling with witticisms, double entendres, and coded accessories. Our step now brings us to the nifty world of gay lingo, or as it was melodiously coined, Polari. Now imagine, my dear somnolent sages, It's the flourishing 50s, and you're hopelessly floundering in an uncharted sea of double-purposed phrases and coded cants, an ocean of isms, if you will. But fear not, your buoy in these undiscovered linguistic waters is your quirkily comedic historian and dull-toned narrator. Let's dip our toes in, shall we? Polari, like a well-raised eyebrow, was intricately nuanced, yet unabashedly flamboyant. Derived from a variety of sources such as Italian, Romani, and good old-fashioned Cockney rhyming slang, Polari served as a playful yet profound bridge between the gay community and their guardian secret. To be colloquially glossy in Polari was to be slick or cagey, exactly what these clever folks needed to remain safe yet sociable. Think of it as an entire language shaped like a bedazzled, elaborately disguised Trojan horse. To the uninitiated, it was mere flashy wordplay. But for those in the know, it was a surreptitiously served smorgasbord of social meaning, a linguist's love child with a magician. Imagine you hear the phrase, "Have you seen her eek?" Confusing, right? Ah, but to a Polari speaker, they know it's an inquiry about a person's face. Simple, isn't it? In fact, one might say, cheeky. An innocent word that transformed into a pocket-sized riddle, just waiting to be unwrapped by those in the know. Polari was like that, as baffling as a koala in a top hat to outsiders, but as warm and welcoming as Grandma's quilt to its speakers. Now, Polari was not alone in its purpose. Accessories also played a silent, yet sparkling part in the grand scheme of coded communication. Handkerchiefs, for instance, were more than a mere sneeze shield. A kerchief, codenamed a hanky, had a set of elaborate color codes, each hue revealing a different preference or disposition. Tucked away nonchalantly in a back pocket, it was a sloth in a tutu type of scene. Unexpected yet amusingly effective. Did you know a green hanky signaled someone was a hustler, or, in today's jargon, a male escort? And just like morning people and night owls, distinctions were made over which pocket the hanky rested in. One pocket meant top, the other, bottom. A silent conversation played out in pastels and deep dyes. Now, isn't this a titillating swirl of silent signals and secret codes? You've lollygagged through an orchestration brighter than a neon sign in a speakeasy, all subtly blink-blinking to etch a rich community, hidden beneath the starched rigidity of 1950s society. Historical hush-hush, if there ever was. 1. My dear sleep-seeking sophisticates. Within this muted yet prismatic symphony were woven the stories of countless individuals, ordinary folks leading extraordinary double lives. Together, we've traipsed quietly through their secret world, as quietly as walking on marshmallows. Shush now, don't wake them. And guess what? Ladies, gents, and those who reject such archaic constraints, more clandestine wisdom yet to unwind in our nocturnal narration. So, snuggle up in soft anticipation, listeners, because you and I have whispers still to decipher and the daylight's far from calling. The sounds of these silent signals echo softly into the night, carrying us forward towards the next chapter in our secret tale. One sunny day in 1950s, New York City, our protagonist, curled up amongst the pages of a comic book, found himself face to face with rather an unusual character one would not typically expect in comics of those times. She wasn't a caped superhero swooping in to save the spewed day, nor a voluptuous pinup as tantalizing as a fresh apple pie. No, this was a woman of supreme poise, decked out in a tailored suit, brandishing a corsage instead of a cape, and with a penchant for hats that would rival the Queen of England herself. She was the inimitable and unashamed Madame Fatale, a trans woman living her life among the pages in the secretive coded world of LGBTQ plus characters in comic books. Fabulously unconventional, she bore witness to a time when being queer had to be communicated like you were some sort of undercover spy in a classic Hitchcock film. Speaking of Hitchcock, psychopathic murderers, saboteurs, and discreet signals, oh my. Hitchcock's film Rope, released in 1948, was an elliptical illustration of how queer characters were represented in the media on the hush-hush. But wouldn't calling it silent be an understatement? Let's swiftly unzip the metaphorical suitcase of history and delve into a scene. Half nervously, half courageously, two men, meticulously arranging a dinner party around a hidden body in a chest, an open secret of their relationship, and their carefully camouflaged queerness. What is perhaps most intriguing is how Hitchcock, in some puzzlingly masterful way, associated the act of murder with being gay, a correlation most would find heinous today, but was rather perceived as genius during that time on account of society's prejudiced views. Ah, the gloriously twisted days of the past. Back to Madame Fatale, our dazzling superhero. Now, it wouldn't be entirely wrong to draw parallels between the clandestine codes in Rope and the rather flamboyantly covert symbolism in two Madame Fatale comic panels. One where Madame Fatale is cornered by bullets only to nonchalantly catch them in a teacup, and another where she gallantly saves a lady, not from a ravaging werewolf, but from gender patriarchy. Were the creators cryptically hinting something? It would indeed be queer if they weren't. Still confused about how this ties into the whole theme of how silence built underground gay communities in the 50s. Well, consider it thusly. Silence sometimes does speak louder than words, or in this case, louder than boldly written comic captions or Hitchcockian film dialogues. It allowed for the subtle, yet powerful bloom of a subculture that thrived on codes, shadows, and sheer resilience. The Madame Fatales and Ropes of the world weren't just testing the waters of a societal taboo. They were setting into motion a unique language that enabled the invisibly visible queer community to communicate, rally, and even organize the occasional jamboree. They didn't need loud proclamations. They found fortitude in a peculiar strand of silence that echoed with every coded dialogue or panel. In this eloquent sort of silence, these communities found strength and a shared identity amidst an otherwise hostile world. It was a courageous march towards a future where loud parades and rainbow flags would replace subtle nods and silent comic panels, an era where being a Madame Fatale would be lauded rather than read between the lines. So, as we tip our hats to our elegant queer superhero, we'll soon wade deeper into this gripping journey. Peeking ahead, we'll uncover how these hushed conversations, silent nods, and coded comic panels didn't just echo within the confines of society's living rooms, they also whispered through the airwaves. And so, prepare to be swept off your feet by secret radio shows in our next chapter, sending out queer signals, one Morse code at a time. Now, do hold on tight to your hat, Madame Fatale. Picture this, a seemingly mundane scene in a busy American city of the 1950s. Cars are bustling on the streets, men in fedoras are reading newspapers in park benches, women in petticoats are window shopping, and small groups are gathered casually around street corners. But unbeknownst to most people, a secret language is being spoken right in front of their very eyes. Now, if you squint real close, you'd see two men making eye contact. One of them might just subtly brush his necktie with his fingers or flip his wrist in a precise gesture. Did you catch that? No? Well, that's the point. You just witnessed the coding system, yet another secret language used by the gay community in the 1950s. This system of gestures, glances, and slight wardrobe adjustments worked as their invisible Morse code, a way to communicate with each other amidst a society that wasn't ready to embrace them. There was something deliciously ironic about using ties, a universally recognized symbol of conformity and corporate masculinity, as a way to signal homosexual attraction. But then again, the 50s were a decade of crisp irony, much like an overcooked waffle. In a world where homosexuality was deemed as socially unacceptable, these men had to be creative, right down to their choice of accessories. For example, if a man wore a red tie, it suggested he was looking to meet someone. On the other hand, a green tie meant he was open to being approached. Furthermore, if the tie was pulled to the left or right, it signified active or passive role preferences. It was almost like a live version of a modern dating app, only more colorful, with fewer servers, and a whole lot more tailor-inspired charm. A rather amusing anecdote spirals around this coding system. One rainy day, a well-meaning gentleman noticed another man's tie knot was slightly off-center and offered to fix it. After the knot was fixed, meaning now shifted, the gentleman was taken aback when he received a wink and a smile. Oh, the delightful surprises the coding system had in store. Of course, it wasn't all smiles, winks, and poorly tied knots. This was a protection mechanism as much as it was a meeting tactic. The coding system kept them somewhat safer from potential homophobes and authorities who were less than friendly to their cause. In a society which weaved discrimination into its everyday fabric, these subtleties were the threads that held their community together. However, appeasing the societal norms didn't mean the community backed off from a bit of cheeky controversy. The elegantly flamboyant cravat was iconic for its departure from the sober ties often sported by straight men. The cravat became a tiara, a badge of honor, the sparkling disco ball in the quiet sophistication of the coding system. Softly, twinkling with subtle charm and rebellion, the tie and cravat made their mark in the annals of the gay community's history. In years that followed, these symbols would inspire and shape other facets of the community, adding fabric to the vibrant tapestry of queerness. Now that we've stitched this chapter up nicely, with a bow-shaped tie knot as a flourish, let's move the fashion talk from the neck down to the feet. Gay men of the 50s and 60s also made some rather interesting fashion statements using socks. For the next part of our fun historical adventure, buckle up, dear listener, and prepare for the wild, woolly, and weirdly compelling world of coded sock wearing. But remember, no socks with sandals, because even in the face of rebellion, there are still certain lines we simply do not cross. In the physical world of the 1950s, gay people lived mostly in shadows, often avoiding the harsh spotlight of societal judgment. So like intrepid explorers, they developed an extensive network of secret signals, sort of silent Morse code, ingeniously designed to say, "Hey there, I'm part of the club too. Let's talk about the key codes within the codes." Elaborate? Yes. Brilliantly creative? Absolutely. So grab your cryptographer's cap, put on your amateur linguist's jacket, and follow me into this extraordinarily crafted tunnel of unspoken communication. Who knows? You may even learn a secret gay handshake or two. Have you ever noticed your friend wearing an earring in their right ear and thought to yourself, "My, that does look rather fashionable"? Well, in the 1950s, this was no mere nod to style. This was a statement, a membership card of sorts, a very silent, very shiny, very fashionable membership card to the gay club. Oh, and while we're discussing accessories, let's not forget the infamous keychains, a phrase which seems rather innocuous, right? But these were no ordinary keychains. They were subtly designed symbols flaunting a bountiful rainbow of colored keys, each color representing a different facet of the individual's identity. It was like a personal heraldry, but with less dragons and more, well, color coordination. Now, let's dive into the delectably secretive world of 1950s gay slang, or, as it's more formally known, polare. This flamboyantly cryptic jargon was mainly used by the gay community in Britain, but its flag flew across the Atlantic too. A conversation in Polari could sound like gibberish to the untrained ear, or perhaps a particularly confusing Shakespearean sonnet. However, to those in the know, it was as clear as the jingle of a colored keychain. An example. Let's take the word dilly boy. This might call to mind a dainty deli sandwich, perhaps topped with a couple of dill pickles. But tut. In Polari, it referred to a male sex worker. As you can imagine, this created quite a panorama of possible miscommunications, like asking for a dilly boy at the local sandwich joint and watching the bewilderment ensues. But thankfully, gay communities of the 1950s, ever resilient, evolved to be fluent in subtleties as well as they were in Polari. But perhaps the most subtle, the most ingenious form of the unspoken signals was the intricate practice of, drumroll, please, cruising. No, no, not cruising as in aimless driving in your new Cadillac, or taking your sweetheart on a Caribbean cruise, although don't those sound delightful? Cruising here stands for the act of seeking out sexual encounters with other men in public places. The art of cruising was a symphony of detailed, choreographed steps, consisting of gestures, physical cues, and, in particular, pitch-perfect eye contact. Immortalized in literature and film, cruising grew to develop an artistry all of its own. It was a ballet of glances, a jazz of body movements, and with the right rhythm, it was just like the dance of love, but certainly more daring. Fascinating, isn't it? The shiny earring, the carnival of keychains, the cryptic language of Polari, and the dance of cruising all made up an intricate tapestry of silent signals in the gay community during the 1950s. Together, they acted as unifying threads, winding and binding this subterranean community, enabling its members to identify and connect with each other. However, this chapter alone doesn't fully encapsulate the broad panorama of these brave pioneers' experiences. After all, we've only scratched the surface of the shimmering earring, haven't we? Oh, just you wait. Into our next meandering venture, we might just unlock more secrets about these silently spoken codes, those unsung heroes of a once-hidden world. Clandestine signals and codes, after all, come in all shapes, sizes and colors, from the discreetly worn bandanas to the sly winks and shared glances, symbolizing an endearing camaraderie. These whispers and signals, whether in language or in action, help form an entire underground community. Don't you just love a bit of a coded mystery, particularly the ones that lead to heartfelt friendships and enduring love? Let's keep delving into the cryptic, coded dance of an era gone by. And who knows, maybe we'll stumble upon some historical rainbow glitter. Isn't history utterly enchanting and hilariously magical when it's, let's say, not being told in a classroom at 8 a.m. on a Monday? So let's snooze and carry on to our next chapter in this labyrinth of past curiosities, our next step in this enchantingly cryptic dance. To be continued, right after this cozy yawn, the vaguest yet most fascinating chapter of our narrative unfurls like a clandestine diary penned under the dim glow of a rickety table lamp late into the night. A delicious hint of rebellion wafts through the air. Enter the hustle and bustle of the quintessential 50s barbershop scene, the pulsating heart of the secret, gay language of style. But before you imagine a cadre of well-coiffed men secretly sharing cryptic codes about top or bottom styles, I assure you, that's a narrative with more flair envisaged for a Quentin Tarantino movie than a chapter of our sedate, quirky history. Barbershops in the 1950s lathered in intricate codes, with the nimble fingers delicately plucking at the strings of a silent harp, harmonizing an underground camaraderie. The buzz of clippers, the hiss of steam, and that sacred chair's transformative swivel bridge the contrasting worlds of the gays and the straights. Ever heard of the crew cut? Well, darling, it was more than just a hair fusillade scalped to the level of a recently mowed lawn. While it regretfully made charming men look like paramilitary enthusiasts or to risk disdain, an overgrown gremlin, it was also an implausible bat signal for gay men in post-war America. Then, there was the flamboyant ducktail, a hairstyle envied by rebellious teenagers and wooed by gay men. You see, ducks and closets have more in common than you might think. For one, both are incredibly good at keeping things tucked away. The hairstyle involved slicking the hair back into a central ridge, resembling a duck's derriere. This coif, although danced a fine line between ravishing and ridiculous, carried an inexplicable charm that said, "Hey, I may look like I've been quarreling with some hair gel and a plastic comb, but I'm part of the team." In this episode of Hair Today, Gone Tomorrow, pompadours and quiffs, with their towering heights threatening the tranquility of low-flying. The birds were also subtle smoke signals indicating a man's preferences. Picture James Dean with his iconic rebellious quiff, and Elvis Presley wearing a pompadour like a crown. These sky titans of hair, while occasionally reckless, windswept adverts for hairspray, were also an homage to their unseen allegiance. Let's not forget the hanky code. Sounds funny, doesn't it? But for a moment, imagine we're in the 1950s. An ordinary man would look at a hanky in a back pocket and think, finally, some relief for the runny nose. But not for the classic gay man. Oh, as if. For them, the hankies were no ordinary pieces of fabric. They were a fashion runway, screaming in technicolor, each shade signifying a different message, ranging from sexual preferences to potential relationship status. Absolutely ingenious, I dare say. A whole dictionary folded neatly into a man's back pocket. So what happens when something as benign as a hair swoop or a color-coded bandana becomes a secret? Language, an undisclosed love note of another kind. It etches a remarkable tale in the annals of history, as the 50s barbershop scene did. These were the unsung peace warriors, engaging in the grand act of existence, knitting an extraordinary tapestry of their identities, one haircut or hanky code at a time. As they exited the barbershops, emboldened by their new haircuts and back pocket chronicles, standing tall against the societal gusts that threatened to sway them, they couldn't have possibly known the movements they'd inspire and the waves they'd cause in the placid sea of sameness. Given the gravity of a haircut and the poetry of a hanky, I entice you to tuck another notch on your history secrets belt and prepare to dive deeper into the labyrinth of the overlooked yet gloriously hilarious covert operations of the 1950s gay underground scene. Brace yourself, because next up we uncover the clandestine playbook of org, book clubs. Now there's a twist you didn't see coming. Or did you? But until then, sweet dreams. Through the hazy lens of the 1950s, as our journey tonight has taken us so far, we've explored the ways in which the underground gay communities constructed a vibrant subculture, not with hammers and nails, but with secret codes and signals. Now, while the postman never really got clued in on what was happening, we're just a little smarter, aren't we? A funny, and yet somewhat telling phenomenon of this time was the use of color to communicate sexual orientation or availability. Technicolor may have been all the rage in Hollywood, but to the gay communities, it was black and white, with a pinch of lavender. Lavender? I hear you question. And yes, lavender. In what rivals the most cryptic of Dan Brown novels, gay was often symbolized by lavender. Lavender ties, handkerchiefs, and even socks were a subtle nod to one's orientation. You see, the beauty of these gestures lied in their subtlety, a wink and a nudge in a world that wanted to keep them invisible. Now, seemingly innocent or even random actions had layered meanings. The position of one's handkerchief or bandana became a coded language, not unlike Morse or Braille. A hanky hanging out of one's left back pocket inferred that the individual was making himself available and was looking for a partner. Conversely, if the hanky hung from the right pocket, it signaled a more, well, let's say a less active role in the potential relationship. Far too scandalous. I hear you gasp. But remember, dear listener, this was a time when a mere indication of homosexuality could lead to ostracization or worse. These silent signals were not just codes, they were lifelines to a community concealed. These codes were a quiet act of defiance, and human nature, being rather cheeky, took delight in these gestures, especially when it involved the mainstream unknowingly sporting these signals. A sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge to each other, a hush-hush joke purely for the enjoyment of those in the know. Was that banker aware that his lavender tie was more than just a quirky fashion choice? Perhaps not, but just the thought of the irony brought a shared smile to the faces of the underground gay community. And then we had Polari, a secret language that had its roots in theatre and British naval slang. Made up of a blend of Italian dialects, Romani, and Cockney slang, among others, Polari was once the clandestine lingo of the gay community. Imagine, amidst the hubbub of an English pub, phrases like, Nafria, bad hair, or Vada the Bona Omi, look at the handsome man, camouflaged as casual chit-chat. The use of Polari, however, witnessed a sharp decline following the legalization of homosexuality in Britain in 1967, as there was less need for secrecy. Now that we've niftily navigated the labyrinth of tears and laughter, clever codes, and colourful bandanas of the 1950s, gay subculture, it's easy to see how silence wasn't always golden. Sometimes, silence came in the pleasing hues of lavender, the unassuming patterns of a hanky in a back pocket, and the hidden melodies of a covert language. As we sign off this chapter, our story continues unnoticed into the decades with more humour, more subtlety, a bit of sequin, and a show tune here and there. So stay snuggled and hold on to your hankies as we prepare next for the peacock revolution of the 60s, when the world of underground gay communities evolved and put on a daring, radiant display to the beat of I Will Survive. We'll be strutting on the catwalks of revolution, but for now, let's delve deeper into the warm, comforting embrace of our dreams and wait for what the dawn of the next chapter brings us. Now, cast your mind back to the Technicolor world of the 1950s, to a lesser-known corner of history where the coal-black eyeliner of Audrey Hepburn collided gloriously with the patent leather shine of James Dean's motorbike boots. We're revisiting a time perhaps familiar to you, but we are also taking a journey inwards to a subculture hidden behind coded language and signals. Welcome to our nocturnal tour through the clandestine labyrinths of 1950s LGBT lingo. Picture a handsome fella at the bar, lighting up a smoke and giving you a wink. And before you, faintly bewildered, can ask yourself, did he just wink at me, or is there smoke in his eyes? There he goes, slipping you a piece of paper with, "Are you a friend of Dorothy?" written on it. Here's a fun fact for you, dreamer. In the 1950s, this was not an inquiry into your relationship with a girl named Dorothy, unless you were in Kansas, of course. This was a coded question used to identify if you were part of the elusive gay underground community. Why Dorothy, you may ask, as you tuck yourself deeper into your blankets, cozily nestled into the intrigue of the past. Ah, well, the magnificent Wizard of Oz had some significance here. Yes, another wink here. We're talking about our wonderfully camp friend in the Emerald City with his troop of misfits. Dorothy's acceptance and love for those who were different became emblematic within the coded language of the community. And thus, the friend of Dorothy phrase was not about Kansas anymore. Then, there was the color-coded language, which was no less cryptic than Dorothy's code word friendships. Lavender was particularly in vogue, derived from the phrase wearing the lavender, suggesting someone was donning a bit more flamboyance than the societal norm. The term lavender boy blossomed beautifully within the community, another way to silently express affiliation. Did you know there existed also a curious language called Polari, composed of a mishmash of Romany, Italian, Yiddish, Cockney rhyming, and French? As the stars twinkle a lullaby outside your window, imagine an entire vocabulary at your fingertips that allowed freedom of expression within the blissful confines of secrecy. Words like naff to denote something drab or uninteresting. Imagine saying, "Oh, that's so naff," and clandestinely communicating so much more. And oh, how could we not speak of women's fashion? While Letterman jackets and pompadours ruled the straight world, the lesbian subculture was embracing a sartorial revolution of its own. Women donning smart trousers and crisply ironed shirts was as much a style statement as a wink-wink nudge-nudge to those in the know. Those women were labeled butch, expressing their identity in a world not ready to understand them. As we can see, dear dreamer, the 1950s community was far from boring, teeming with a sense of daring creativity, coded languages, secret nods, and quiet alliances. These beautiful waltzes of words and signs growing under the imposed silence brought people together and formed bonds within hidden spaces. A silent rebellion, an array of colors underneath the grayscale of oppression. And with that, we've once again navigated the tangible remnants of a bygone era, tripped over tongues with Polari, and played a hush-hush game of spot the friendship code word. Still with us? Promise you're not getting too drowsy with all these sweet secrets. Ah, good. Because just around the corner, there are whispers of the bubbling up of the LGBT liberation, and the real fun is just getting started. So, tighten your grip around your blanket, settle into your cushion, and let's keep going, turning another page of history towards Chapter 18, a chapter that might be a little revolutionary. Who knew history could be so wonderfully naff? Right? Right. Wonderful. Now, let's tiptoe a little deeper. As we gently drift further into our nocturnal voyage down memory lane, allow me to ask you a fun little question. Have you ever wondered why so many folks attribute creativity broadly to the queer community? Well, if you take a quick puff on the pipe of history, you'll realize that survival in the 1950s practically got a master's degree in thinking outside of the box. Say hello to necessity, the mother of invention. Picture yourself back in the 1950s. Political tension is tantamount to braising a turkey in the shape of a mellow samba, a slow roast marked by hits of spice and uncertainty. Now, imagine having a secret you're desperate to share, but must keep hidden. What to do? As it turns out, the answer largely hinged on the use of symbols and clothing. So let us meander from the highway of history for a moment, and instead take the picturesque scenic route through the landscape of 1950s fashion. You see, the coded language of clothing held an essential role, unlockable only by those wielding the precious ring of insight. The notorious handkerchief code, also known as hanky code, was one of these secret signals. Now you might be thinking, handkerchiefs? Aren't those for the choleric Victorian ladies who swooned on cue or detectives with the sniffles? Quite so, dear listener, but we aren't in the Victorian times, and decoding history is even more thrilling than your average whodunit. In the gay underground community of the 1950s, handkerchiefs of various colors worn in specific pockets essentially broadcasted one's interest or identity, turning clothing into a sort of silent semaphore. Take the color green, for instance. In the hanky code, a green handkerchief represented a socialite, and if it was placed in the left pocket, this indicated that the wearer liked to lead the dance at gatherings, if you're picking up what I'm putting down. Conversely, wearing the same green hanky in the right side pocket indicated this particular individual preferred to follow in the dance of life, in every sense of the phrase. And it wasn't just about potent potables and dance, mind you. Handkerchief's colors ran the gauntlet from scarlet to lavender, and everything in between, each holding their very unique and vibrantly beautiful meanings. Picture walking into your favorite speakeasy, boutique, tucking a dash of brilliant colored silk into your pocket, and leaving with your identity quietly but vibrantly shining for those who shared your secret. Remember when we mentioned creativity and survival? Well, the cunning and elegant use of badges, earrings, and even the way one rolled their shirt sleeves were seen as subtle yet vital statements. In a time when conventional society was a labyrinth, these beacons guided like-minded souls to understanding and connection. Ah, the promise of connection. It's like a sweet lullaby, whispering beneath the crackling records of the time, isn't it? Dancing amidst the quiet conversations held in hushed tones, percolating amidst coded signs, all beckoning those eyes that were open, those hearts understanding. I must say that the sheer ingenuity and resilience of the LGBT+ community during the 1950s is a testament to the power of human spirit and the quest for authenticity, hiding in plain sight yet paradoxically visible to the right people. They found a way where there seemed to be none. Here, in our somnolent stroll through the mazes of the yesteryears, we doff our caps at the foundations of ingenuity and persistence. Now, consider yourself armed with a newfound understanding, a glimpse into the clandestine worlds that thrived beneath the neon veneer of the 1950s. So, the next time you tuck a handkerchief into your pocket, take a moment to savor its meaning. For in colors and cloth, histories are woven. Curl up now in the cocoon of knowledge, for we've walked a shrouded passageway to land on this bright isle of understanding. Oh, but we're not done just yet. Sink deeper in the pillows for our next chapter beckons. Have you ever wondered why the police might anxiously peer into your drink? Ah, but of course, I'm getting ahead of myself. Until then, allow the rhythm of the past to soothe your senses as we anticipate more roads less traveled on our historical journey. Now, let's journey to the heart of New York City. Picture it, an intoxicating maelstrom of sounds, sights, and oh yes, all the delightful confusion of city life seen in the mid-1950s. While the city was an extraordinary meeting place for many, it was the underground gay community where the most intriguing ballet of silent signals took place. Imagine clandestine meetings in parks under the innocent guise of a Sunday leisurely stroll, or covert rendezvous in dimly lit jazz husks. Just like Joe, your everyday average guy, heading out on a Saturday night, white shirt crisply marinated in starch, gleaming under the poor lighting of his apartment, a maroon tie, a tad too wide for current fashion standards, also known as flagrant disregard for heteronormative decorum, acted as his sartorially subtle confession of his evening's intent. Ah, the 1950s, when your choice of neckwear was more than just a sartorial statement. Now you see it. Now you don't sort of subterfuge, wink, wink and all that. Now let's follow Joe, shall we? As he ventured into the bustling dimness of a jazz club. An atmosphere brooding with brass melodies seeped out from a trumpet as thick as the nicotine fog billowing against the ceiling. The crowd sways rhythmically in tandem with the sultry tune of the saxophone, as if driven by a different beat. Their movements almost mirroring someone doing the sleepy, shuffling sidestep one does when nature calls at 2 a.m. and you don't want to wake up completely. Stealthy and unassuming, yet filled with purpose. Joe locates his prospective dance partner, a gentleman at the bar, eyebrows immaculate with the precision of two well-drawn architect's angles, raising his left pant leg ever so slightly to reveal boldly patterned socks. A falling star at midday wouldn't have been quite as unexpected or dazzling. They lock eyes in a silent understanding. The patterned socks, you see, were not merely a fashion statement but a secret code. These were the semaphores of the time, each design reflecting a different preference in the sea of sameness. Like a sheep bounding off to munch greener pastures while the flock sleeps. Surely you're asking, socks as secret code? That's the best they could come up with. Ah, dear listener, it was the 1950s. The technological prowess resembling a narcoleptic sloth, and emojis were yet to make their profound impact on our means of communication. Now let's step away from our riveting jazz club scene, leave the bittersweet serenade of the trumpet, and swing to the click-clack rhythm of typewriters, the smoke-filled offices of Madison Avenue. Yes, the land of advertising, where whispers of hidden signals peppered the vibrant pages of comic books and seemingly innocent cereal boxes. A nudge-nudge in every page turn that signaled, "You're not alone," to those who knew how to read them. Bill, on the other hand, bore an unconventional charm. A creative director, slyly hesitant to include ogling secretaries as part of his domestic life, depiction in advertisements. His campaigns, like abstract paintings, only showed clear features when viewed from a certain angle. A shoulder touch here, a lingering look there, hidden yet hiding in plain sight. Ah, we've come far in unraveling the world of silent signals. But don't be lulled into believing you've got everything figured out. Like traversing a labyrinth at dusk, the thrill lies in the anticipation of what lies ahead. Remember, dear listener, nighttime is only a curtain for the mysteries of tomorrow. So, prepare to keep unraveling the thread of these clandestine codes one semaphore at a time. We're just getting to the good part. Sleep now and dream of patterned socks, semaphoric ties, and labyrinthine tales. For when you awaken, we'll dive deeper into the enigma of camouflage that allowed underground communities to rise and take shape out of little more than whispers and winks. Good night, dear listener, and pleasant dreams. As the sun hung low in the eyes, 1950s sky, painting the world in warm auburn hues, a group of individuals found community, camaraderie, and connection within grapevine of whispers and subtle signals. In society's eyes, these queer souls were merely observers, lingering on the fringes. Yet unbeknownst to many, the sparks of their silent rebellion ignited an underground revolution. Zoom in, if you would, to a neighborhood cafe. It's a day like any other. Men in their hats and ties, women in perfectly tailored dresses. And there, across the crowded room, a man with a red tie casually draped around his neck makes eye contact with another man, holding a green handkerchief conspicuously in his left pocket. These dear, sleep-enchanted historians were the signifiers of an underground gay language. A nod here, a handkerchief there, a lingering gaze here. That was all it took to create secret signals of harmony within a society that, if you woke up from sleep and squinted at it, was as bland as a bowl of colorless soup. But here's the funny part. That green handkerchief, not just a fashion statement. It was a flag, a silent signal part of a complex, secret language known as the Handkerchief Code, which had a definite Sherlock Holmes meets Night at the Roxbury vibe. The color and position of the handkerchief could speak volumes about a person's preferences, allowing these silent exchanges of communication to transpire amidst the bustle of the indifferently straight world. Similarly, the red tie, it was a tricky little fox. In straight-laced society, it was just another sartorial choice, but to those fluent in this language, it gently whispered an identity, a kinship, a defiance. While these signals were not guaranteed safeties from a society that was swift to judge, they were, no doubt, remnants of a brave, colorful resistance stitched silently into the grayscale of the era. And boy, did they work. The Polari language, a lingo full of code words borrowed from different languages, Cockney, rhyming slang, and backslang, played a vital role. Imagine trying to pronounce Zoosh the Rhea while keeping your yawns in check. Spoiler alert, Raya is hair spelled backward and Zoosh means to style. It's got a fun little ring to it, doesn't it? Ah, the beauty of secret languages. This sly linguistic dancing let gay men create a safe space within their conversations. This was not unlike padding one's alarm clock in cotton wool, a subtle and gentle way of softening the blow of social scrutiny. These codes were not merely words or accessories. They were emotions, rebellions, an expression strung together in a silent symphony. They were the whispered lullabies of an era that was adamantly chanting anthems of false normality. To maintain a network within an oblivious society, signified through different dress codes, coded language, and unconventional social practices, these communities displayed an immense level of creativity and resilience. Despite society's harsh spotlight, they managed to thrive, shimmering subtly in its blinding glare. I must admit, there's an almost poetic irony within all this. In a time when conform or be cast out was the societal motto, the undercurrents of difference were humming a delightfully diverse obat. People found a way to connect, to belong, and to communicate in a language so silent that it was almost dreamlike. Now, with the foundation of these secret signals embedded in your dewy, sleepy minds, let's traverse into the morrow, where we'll discover how these subtle symphonies awakened an entire era, leaving a legacy that still echoes in the hushed corners of history. But for now, nestle back into your pillows and let this cozy little chapter of hidden stories lull you into a slumber brimming with pleasant dreams. The whispers of the past will accompany you till the dawn of a new chapter in our fascinating journey. Good night, dear listeners, and keep the secrets tight until the morning. Light. Right. My sleepy historians, let's peek behind the curtains of the 1950s to a time when the art of subtlety was raised to such fantastical levels it would have left even Mona Lisa wondering, what's with that secretive smile? We're taking a whimsical detour into the world of underground gay communities and their gyms. Yes, you heard right. Gyms. It seems the concept of sweating to the oldies has a rather colourful past. Now, the 1950s were a time when you couldn't just pull out your smartphone and swipe right on potential love interests, nor could you casually change your Facebook status to "interested in men." There was no Rebel Girl anthem playing in the background, and jovial parades boasting an astounding array of colourful floats were the stuff of very distant dreams. Underground gay communities had to navigate society's norms stealthily, adding, shall we say, exciting and often ironic layers to everyday interactions. And that brings us to gyms, those dens of muscular exposition, swathed in the aromas of sweat, metal, and perfectly coiffed pompadours, holding far more than the secret to enviable calves or how to maximize your bench press. These seemingly unsuspecting establishments often acted as coded anchor points within underground gay communities. Now you would think, a gym, really, where grunting men lift incredibly large bits of metal for no apparent reason other than seemingly to impress others, lifting slightly smaller bits of metal. Yes, dear sleepy friend, precisely that place. Because under the stern gaze of society, where else could gentlemen gather, slyly exchange glances, and occasionally phone numbers, all while maintaining an appearance of socially acceptable masculinity? Consider it the ultimate treadmill camouflage, if you will. Our resourceful friends in the 50s cleverly understood the dual benefit of a gym membership, muscles and mate finding. And though society might have been stern, it was considerably less so when viewing the world through the lens of a hefty dumbbell. But of course, these weren't just any gyms. Not every fitness facility was teeming with clandestine rendezvous and significant glances. No, sir. Certain gyms gained popularity within the communities through word of mouth, a carefully done under-the-radar kind of advertising that built the gym's reputation as a meeting place. Thus, progressive muscle relaxation became the relaxing sine qua non of these delightfully muscular hubs of social interaction. Here's where we must appreciate the subtle brilliance of this hidden culture. It was an intricate ballet between the unspoken language of glances and shared workout schedules. A flexing bicep here, an extended stretching routine there, quietly choreographed messages that conveyed far more than an ostentatious chat-up line ever could. But it wasn't all shadowy exchanges and coded messaging. There was also a dash of humor. Take, for instance, a popular gym in New York, known for its underground clientele. It was delightfully called Muscles and Mascara, a wily wink at the dual life many of its patrons led, while surely eliciting chuckles and knowing smiles among its enlightened community. The courage with a laugh. What's heftier than that? As we gently treadmill our way through this fitting history piece, let's remind ourselves of the ingenuity of the human spirit in circumstances less than ideal. It's a testament to how, even under the overwhelming weight of society's judgment, pulling together a whimsical sense of humor, a perceptive understanding of society's paradoxical views, and an unyielding desire for self-expression could reshape an environment, create safety, and foster connection. Having flexed our historical biceps, we're steadily moving on towards Chapter 22. Unlace your gym shoes, peel off your workout gear, and prepare to embark on a more musical voyage. We're diving into the fascinating story of secret gay codes hidden in the pop music of the era. The nuances of culture are like hidden gems, aren't they? Secretly twinkling, subtly shining. And when you discover them, the world suddenly seems a little bit more intriguing. So get ready for a journey into music history, where melodies and lyrics wore a cloak of symbolism, and the vinyl records spun tales of love, resilience, and unity. A lullaby from history is waiting for you. And as always, it promises to be anything but boring. Let's dream on, shall we? During the late 1950s, amidst the witch hunt for queer individuals with a certain paranoid McCarthyite debacle, another form of communication was silently sparking revolutions in gay bars throughout the United States. A wink, a certain tilt of a glass, the right type-in the right place, all secret codes of the gay community. Here, in these darkened corners, where the ominous clinks of cocktail glasses harmonized with hushed whispers, these small signals became lifelines. Lifelines to the heart of belonging. Those who wore jewelry, particularly men, had a fashionable and clandestine code sewed in the threads of their fashion choices. If they wore an earring in their left ear, congratulations, my dear, you're speaking in signs. Left ear meant you were gay. Extending a friendly hand might elicit chuckles from not-so-tamed imaginations. But these were people trying to muster up the courage just to exist, my friend. So no jesting allowed. A more nuanced code, kind of a top-secret level clearance, was the handkerchief code, or the hanky code, used to signify a wearer's sexual fetishes and whether they preferred to dominate or perhaps submit. An elusive black handkerchief in your left back pocket. You're most likely into BDSM, and it wouldn't be surprising if you're the one brandishing the whip. Purely academic inquiries, of course. I promise I'm not creating your queer 1950s dating profile. Can we also talk about how these men had color-coded hankies for every conceivable fetish? It was like the world's most risque rainbow painted on the canvas of their denim pockets. And you thought picking an outfit for an everyday date now feels like a scene from The Devil Wears Prada. The delightful irony here, dear dreamers, is that while wider society in the 50s held a somewhat repressed and rather uncolourful view of homosexuality, gay men in particular were curating a lush spectrum of handkerchief hues, each more audacious and provocative than the last. And let's not forget about women. Lesbian women too had their secret signals. Rings of keys hanging on belt loops were the bat signals of their time. If you saw a lady with a set of keys dangling from her jeans, you might just be looking out on your very own Lois Lane. Or perhaps Batwoman. Now, one signal which comes to me in hushed whispers from the past is one which involved cigarettes. Oh, these were more than just the symbols of rebellious cool. They were posed to be in black and white 50s cinema. If a woman placed her cigarette pack on the table, showing the top face, it sent the message that she was open to a conversation, a drink maybe. If the pack displayed its bottom face, she wasn't interested, folks. Such was the simple and yet markedly profound use of these everyday items. To you, my attentive listener, it may sound like we're discussing wartime cryptography or some kind of 50s version of Hogwarts School for queer folks. But in reality, these were everyday men and women trying to create spaces for themselves in a world that was bent on filtering the rainbow into greys. As our sleepy journey through the history of the silent signals of the gay 1950s comes to a gentle rendezvous, I leave you with this thought. Isn't it fascinating how something as simple as a handkerchief or a ring of keys could help build the foundation of a whole community? Like secret strings pulling together a beautiful quilt of diversity and acceptance, under the radar and right under the noses of those who'd rather pull them apart. As we slip lightly into the cusp of dreams, let's prepare ourselves to dive deeper into the clandestine communications of the queer folk in the 60s. You see, the rainbow was becoming more vibrant, visible, and the whispers were now carried with songs of liberation. But that, dear friends, is a tale for another chapter in our Goodnight Chronicles. In the next episode, we shall pull back the curtain on the larger, louder, and prouder 1960s era of the gay liberation movement. Ah, such tales to come. But for now, rest your weary heads, dear listeners, for even you are keys in the endless symphony of life, sleep, and hidden histories. So, here we are, my sleepy history buffs, exploring the artistic oasis of the 1950s underground communities where the unconventional drew their breaths freely. Born from subterranean codes and camouflage signals, the gay communities thrived, not in light, but under the velvet cover of secrecy. Remarkably, like whispered lullabies rippling across the nighttime expanse, their influence would pave the pathway for the history of humanity's most vibrantly radiant and seemingly disobedient rainbows. Now, take a moment to remember the 1950s, the post-war eon, where societal norms dictated human roots, prompting many to navigate the rocky trails of secrecy to find acceptance. Imagine being a lighthouse, pulsing vibrantly, but forced to don a thick woolen cloak of dusk to blend into a monochrome landscape. To quote the infamous Aristotle's somewhat overturned philosophy here, the whole was indeed far greater than the sum of its parts, except in this case, many of the parts were wearing polka-dotted ascots and sequined cowboy boots hidden under carefully choreographed normalcy. Speaking of boots, and isn't it always about footwear in the end, the underground gay community webbed an intricate design of secret signals. A pair of classic brogues, for example, bore more tales than a history book, and simply carrying a red handkerchief implied colourful stories of love, glimmering incognito beneath the mundane khaki and grey surface of society. And just imagine the many tales veiled within left or right side jacket pins, an entire sub-language peeping coyly from under dinner jackets, whispering stories of love, longing, and the audacious rebellion of affection against uninspiring banality. In the feverishly synchronized waltz of these secret signals, the Polari language pirouetted like a sleek, stiletto-clad ballerina. Maybe you're familiar with the term, but if not, Polari is something like a cross between a circus, a silent film, and a radio drama, but all conducted inside an invisible Morse code. People would blend phrases such as Nafomi or Vada the Bonacartes into the most mundane conversation about weather, thereby transforming a simple chat about rain clouds into the serenaded overture of secret rendezvous. Now, this does evoke an image of Sherlock Holmes conducting an orchestra of truths from the most organic, lie-laced melodies, doesn't it? However, the beauty of this linguistic ballet wasn't in its allure to sly detectives. No, it was in its existence as a lifeline, a beacon for those star-crossed lovers, navigating stormy seas, connecting hearts under the disguise of naff weather chats. But what was the epicenter of this kaleidoscopic movement, you ask? The answer whiplashes you back to our fantastic, sequined cowboy boots, because it was bars, clubs, and coffee houses that cradled these cloaked communities. Establishments like Julius Bar in New York to Black Cat Tavern in San Francisco emerged as the silent superheroes, the patrons hidden behind masks, but oh, such bright-eyed, dream-chasing masks they wore. These incubators of unique cultures covertly nurtured the flamboyance and unique self-expression of the underground gay communities. These safe havens vibes reminded you of that time when you secretly indulged in that last slice of midnight cake, uncaught and regally unapologetic. Well, sprinkle that cake with some disco glitter and put on an intriguing feathered masquerade mask, and voila! One might wonder how managing to invent an entire clandestine culture, from symbols to conversation, signals to meeting places, could be possible in an era pockmarked by repression. Yet, perhaps from the cauldron where the stew of rebellion simmers, the richest tales of human spirit arise, a lovely paradox in itself. As the curtain, or should we say the heavy velvet drapes, begin to close on these veiled tales, your eyelids may be drooping with the lull of history's hypnotic ballads. Fear not, for even as we usher you into a peaceful slumber, we'll continue tiptoeing towards the final chapter. So stay nestled comfortably and prepare to tumble further down the rabbit hole into a world where the dawn of acceptance rises, splashing brilliant hues across the firmament of underground. LGBTQ plus history. In the hush of the night, we tiptoe back to 1950s America, a time when poodle skirts twirled to the tune of the jukebox and hot rods purred under the glow of neon lights. Underneath all that glitz, a very discreet set of silent, ornate signals fluttered in hidden corners, akin to a secret handshake. Our focus? The delicate, unspoken ballet of coded language and behavior within the underground gay communities of the era. Quite a clandestine cha-cha. Let's first flick to the Pink Poodle, a quintessential speakeasy nook tucked away in a seedy alley of San Francisco. Here, a sly wink wasn't merely a bout of pre-polka conviviality, but a potential prelude to romance. A strategically placed handkerchief, merely an accessory to the uninformed, was the dance card in this secret ballet. From polka dots to paisleys, each pattern, each color, wheezed tales of unspoken desires and yearnings. The beautiful irony of this colorful semaphore danced right under everyone's nose. This hue-inclined hanky code was not exclusive to underground bars, though. It found a home in everyday life, even in local grocery stores. Picture Gordon with a cheery red kerchief poking out from his back pocket while buying his humdrum cornflakes in the bustling grocery store. If someone had a similar handkerchief, they shared a secret waltz down the breakfast cereal aisle. Fascinating, somewhat heartwarming, yet discreet. Makes you wonder of the unsaid stories buried in the cereal boxes of your local store, doesn't it? Next stop, the cabaret. Erring on the risk side of humor were our beloved drag queens. Their performances were an explosion of sequins, feathers, and laughter, yet a closer look at the flamboyant hysteria revealed subtle jabs at societal norms and personal experiences. A wink here, a leg kick there, and a twirl of the feather boa became their version of dancing Morse code. Those in the know could decipher and share in the unexpressed conversation beneath the spectacle. Surely, this historical equivalent of a WhatsApp group chat was far more captivating. Likewise, lavender linguistics, the coded language used within the community, offered a verbal spin to the lowercase tango. Listen carefully, an auntie wasn't just referring to your mom's younger sister, but perhaps a gay man. The term fish, disgustingly enough, was not a white-fleshed sea creature served with chips, but a term for an effeminate gay man. As for books, friend of Dorothy wasn't so much a literary pal of the Kansas-dwelling, ruby slipper-wearing maiden, but an endearing term used to recognize a fellow gay man. Sounds like a charming secret book club, doesn't it? To conclude this grand finale, take a peek into the polite facade of the potluck dinners and barbecues, a recipe of coded body language, unassuming accessories, and cryptic words cooked up an indulgent feast of defiant expression. The 1950s weren't merely a time of Cold War paranoia and rock and roll fever, but also of resilience, courage, and secret elbow bumps of acceptance. Now, if everyone could ease into their blankets and snuggle into your fluffy pillows, we're nearing the end of this warm-hearted dance down memory lane. Picture the twinkling stars mimicking the glittering sequins of cabaret dancers, the bedside lamp throwing soft hues reminiscent of the handkerchief signals. This quiet ballet, conducted under the cover of night, was a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a gleeful defiance of conformity, a choreographed rebellion, a silent symbol of solidarity. As we gently turn down the volume on the jaunty tunes of the era and dim the lights on the sparkling performances, let's take a bow to the remarkable resilience and creativity of these clandestine communities. And remember, whether it's a chipper salute with your feather boa or a subtle nod over your fiber-rich bran flakes, the world can indeed be a stage for your own silent ballet. Goodness, how marvelously riveting this hush-hush jamboree has been. As we bid adieu to yesteryears and the luminous moon nudges us toward the comforting embrace of sleep, my dear dreamers, remember the intertwined dance of history and humanity continues. But for tonight, let the moonlit lullaby lead us to a world of peaceful dreams, safe in the knowledge that history is as rich, complex, and rib-ticklingly funny as our shared dance. Sleep well, dear friends. We'll waltz again into another tale of unseen corners of the past on the morrow.